Hey, beautiful people, also known as Good Up people, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Good Up podcast. We are starting this episode off by celebrating. Deidre, what are we celebrating?
30,000 downloads to date. 30 plus. I think we're definitely beyond the 30,000, but
Yeah, so we're
girl,
we're, we're just over 30,000. So, yay! Hand
thank
clap
you
for that.
guys. You guys are the bomb. Like, y'all really, really, really like us. Like, y'all really
Yeah.
fuck with us, and that's crazy. I
Yeah,
love it
I
here.
I said it on Twitter the other day. I don't know if 30,000 is a lot for these big bitch podcasts out here, but I know that for a homegrown podcast with two hosts from the Virgin Islands that
Facts.
does what we do, 30,000 downloads in a span of 2 years is amazing. To be celebrating 30,000 a couple of months after we just celebrated our 20K is
But
fucking
we
dope.
celebrated our 10K not too long
Last
ago.
year,
And
yeah,
like now we're at, so that's dope. Like
yeah,
considering how small our community even is in the first place.
exactly, exactly.
Especially since majority of our listeners, if I could be wrong because I don't be looking at them numbers. Hey, Isa does. Majority of our listeners are from the Virgin Islands, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
A
yeah, the vast majority of our listeners are from home, which means that us having 30,000 downloads means that I love we bad 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 and that we go up bad. So yeah, thank you for that. Like as if you are a part of the Good Up VIP section over on Patreon, you can see that Deidre and I went all out. We got our balloons, we got a
yeah.
little 30K behind us because what did we talk about on this imposter syndrome episode from earlier this season is to celebrate your wins and to celebrate your fucking self. So,
Exactly. The small wins and the big ones. And this is a little bit of
exactly.
both, low key, depending on, what perspective you're looking
Exactly.
at. I think 30K is a big and, it's a win worth celebrating.
Exactly.
So
And I will be celebrating every win for Good Up. So please expect me to buy these balloons every single, like when we hit 40K, guess what guys are doing? When we hit 50, guess what guys are doing? Because
okay.
we deserve that. I mean,
We do.
we have worked really hard to get to this point. Like, Deidre has been amazing in this entire process. Y'all know every chance I get, I'll be like, well, I don't do this by myself. I have a co host and she's awesome. So please know, like, had it not been for Deidre, we would not be here because I could not have done this by myself. So,
You think
Deidre,
so?
shout out to you. Yes,
Oh
I
wow.
absolutely think so. I think that the podcast became what it was because of the relationship that we have. The other day, and I can prove it. The other day, a friend of mine was texting me, and he was listening to the podcast for the first time,
Mhm.
and he was like, "The energy that y'all have, like y'all balance each other so well. You have such like a good dynamic. Like it's fun to listen to." And he was just like, "Where did y'all like? How long have y'all known each other?" I was like, "Me and DJ know each other since high school. We haven't seen each other
Yeah,
since,
but
since high school."
yeah, we haven't seen each other in a year, well over a
Yeah,
decade. But we've known each other since then. It's funny.
yeah.
That's the same feedback that I get. Like anybody that I know personally. And one thing, I don't keep people around who are just like yes men. If they had like
Exactly.
critiques, they would share them. But any feedback I've gotten was the same exact thing, like that we balance each other out. They're like, you guys both bring something to the show that's just so beautiful and necessary, and there's balance. And they're like, hey, Isa brings the fire and Deidre brings the calm. And I'm like, really? I like
It'll
that though.
it'll switch. It'll switch.
Sometimes it switch because I'll be y'all know when once I got a PSA, honey, here I sort of gotta diffuse the situation.
I'll be like, Didra, 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 Didra,
We recording,
Didra.
honey. We recording.
But no, yeah, I think that's like the best compliment ever that they realize like the type of relationship we have, that we balance each other out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely want to take this moment. You know how people again when they're on the stage and they have their little Oscar and they're just like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you really like me. But
And I wanna take this time to
I want
really
to
shout out.
thank I want to thank my bitches because without you
But you know what?
wouldn't
Hey,
be.
I may bring some level of balance and all that jazz, but the real tea, and y'all know I am okay saying this, I don't be editing these shows. I don't be doing none of that. Hey, I said I do the work that makes this podcast come out every week. Okay, that's the
I
real
don't
tea.
try. I
You
don't
don't
try.
do it. You don't try. You do it. You don't. Yo, I was just watching this show on Netflix called Good Girls, And a thug was talking to one of the women who was involved in whatever crime activity. And she was like, I tried. And he said, don't try, bitch. Do. You don't try, bitch. You do. Because the real tea is if Heiza wasn't on her MacBook, typing like Kermit and editing and making these beautiful graphics and updating our fucking, what's the notes app on our devices?
I think it's just notes.
Updating the damn notes app with all these ideas and concepts and reaching out to guests, we wouldn't have a podcast because I don't be doing that.
This is my baby, y'all. Like,
this is really Heiza's baby. I sometimes feel like I'm that step parent who came in when the baby was very young, so it's understood that it's my child. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not the parent who birthed it, but I'm like that parent who met the mom when she was like when the baby was a baby, and now it's my baby too. And it's like you're not gonna call me the stepmom.
You know those pictures that'll be like, not the step parent, I'm the parent that stepped up or some shit like that. Like that teaches
me. What you're not gonna do is play around about my baby. This is my baby, okay? But she birthed it. She literally gestated the baby and birthed it, and but this is my fucking baby too.
Exactly.
But I'm not gonna act like I don't be.
Listen, I see this thing as just as much yours as it is mine, because when I say like there would be no Good Up without you, it's that like you bring that to the show, right? Like you bring a lot of these ideas, you bring the conversation, like you bring yourself, and despite you being as busy as you are and having as much going on as you do, like you show up. There's people, and we both know there's people that could have been on this show who, and no shade to them, it just was not in them to show up and to put this much work into the process. And that's not a bad thing. True. It just means that like this type of commitment, like you joined this show in 2020 and you're still fucking here after seeing how much work it is.
Here.
So
this is my baby, man. This is my baby. This is really I will show up to the school and fight behind this baby. Like this is I'm coming to the PTA meetings behind this baby.
So I mean, we say this all to say, guys, like 30,000 really feels amazing. It was not what I envisioned when I started the podcast. I really just wanted a place to talk shit. And social media can only do so much, and it just became something so much more. So thank you guys for all of the love. Thank you to, again, our VIP community over on Patreon, and especially in our private Facebook group, IOLIT.
Yes.
We have gained so many patrons this season that I'd just be sitting there like, huh?
Thank you guys. This is coming off the heels of a pandemic, a pandose.
Exactly. Like people are still finding it in themselves to support the podcast financially. But on top of that, like people don't really show love. It get people who to pop up on Twitter on Tuesdays and be like, hey bitch, it's Good Up Tuesday. I already like the question threads. We just got some love on what is the show called? Worldwide Women Wednesdays. It's hosted by the Virgin Islands Department of Education. I was on there a couple of weeks ago. And Dion Donadell was like, this podcast it's raw and it's unfiltered, but it's a conversation that has to happen. Like, I appreciate all of the West Girl on Facebook.
That's my baby. She and I was just texting each other earlier. I love she bad.
Exactly. Like, what bitches in the podcast sphere know who the fuck West Girl is?
Because I know her. I don't know I know the person who is West Girl. I know that motherfucker. Am I gonna say their name? Absolutely the fuck not.
Right. We will never reveal the identity of West Girl.
We be in here texting.
You know what bitch know West Girl?
Because of how respectful I am of that alias, is I chose to save her name in my phone as West Girl instead of her actual name, because you could use the nickname feature. But let's say somebody see West Girl pop up on my phone and they decide to play brace and go see the real name just because of the alias. I'm not gonna out my good sis. Like, what's understood don't need to be said.
Right. But West Girl really does West Girl really does give us so much love, like so much support, is always sharing our content. And listen, when you have your own page and you have your own platform, you are not obligated by any means to share that platform with anybody else. Even if it's the nice thing to do, you're not obligated. So for West Girl, one, to partner with us last season and share our content every week, and then for that to continue, even though we're not formally partnered this season, like for her to continue
That
or,
just
you
goes
know,
to show how dope
sharing.
she is.
Yeah, but we listen, we get love from the Virgin Islands Culture page on Instagram. We get love from VI Outlet on Instagram.
Wow.
Like,
Oh, I'm getting
Janisha John the other
chills.
day messaged me and was like, "I queen, I love what you guys are doing." I was like,
Oh
Janisha,
wow. I
like,
love
Troy,
that,
go
makes me
up
that
studio,
thank you
please.
guys for all the support. My goodness.
Right. Like, Tehran was on this fuck, okay? A lot
We
of can't say that.
Tehran Thomas was on our fucking part, and we had a great time.
Yeah.
Y'all, that was still to this day
Yeah.
one of my favorite episodes. We had such a good time.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
love being a part of our community. As far away as I may be, I still love being, and I have a hard time saying that that's what we are, but we are a fixture in our community. It
Yeah.
just is what it is. You know,
It
we
yeah.
talked about it earlier. It's imposter syndrome that makes me a little cringy saying that we're a fixture in our community, but the reality is that we are. We
Yeah.
talk about things that matter to our community because at the end of the day, we give a damn about our community. So
Yeah. And listen, I don't feel the same way. I hesitate to try to prop Good Up as like the lead podcast or the premier podcast because I love and respect all the other VI podcasters that are out here doing it. They have amazing shows that I promise I don't listen to other people's podcasts every week. I don't just hype Good Up and then not support other content.
yeah,
But you know, with that being said, like Good Up has accomplished so much, and that's because of the people who listen to the podcast and support the
facts.
podcast. And that's also because like we have been working really hard to try to improve Good Up every season. So with that being said, before I even yes, quick shout out to Kyra J. Kyra was the creator of this platform called Kicking It. We partnered with Kicking It also last season, and Kyra is really the person who worked with me on creating this new aesthetic that Good Up has. So props to Kyra because like this aesthetic has inspired me so much to create a different kind of content for Good Up. And where we are now, like she contributed to that. And I've given her flowers privately, so I wanted to make sure I did that publicly. But yeah, just 30,000 downloads might be like, okay, bitch, I shit get downloaded 30,000 times. But for
But
me,
we appreciate it.
yeah, that represents like hella people that are listening to this podcast on a consistent basis.
Facts.
Like, you know, and it's only getting better and it's only going to go up from there. You know, my goal is starting to hit those Apple charts a little more
Yes.
than we are. We'd hit them, right? Every couple of months I'd get a notification and it'll be like 281. And then it'll fall
So
off.
we're charting. It don't matter. We charting. That's all that matters.
But to pop up on Apple Podcast relationship charts as
Oh, wow.
281 when there are thousands of podcasts.
That's a big deal.
That's
Exactly.
huge. Even
That's
though that fuck to
huge.
disappear the next day, that shit's still lit. We
Yeah.
were there,
So
right?
so please, for one, thank you guys for putting us there, and please keep us there. You know,
Yeah.
share us, share reviews. Please write reviews. Like, please
Exactly.
rate the podcast and be honest. If you feel like sometimes we'd just be doing too much, say that fuck, because you know,
Yeah.
reviews are better than none. And from what I noticed, I think you can also rate the podcast on Spotify. So if you listen on Spotify, you can also rate it on Spotify.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you
I
guys for all that you do.
Yeah, I am very grateful. I am very excited about where Good Up is going to go. I can see it getting bigger and getting better. But again, that is going to
I heard it. I heard it.
I was like, bitch, don't you dare. But
I heard it.
so in getting bigger and getting better, right? Good Up requires, you know, both of us to put a level of energy into the podcast that for me, I don't really put into other things, right? So I show up for Good Up, right? It requires me to show up. So in the spirit of showing up, right? We ain't gonna talk about this Toddy K download all day. We do have an episode topic.
Yeah.
The idea to talk about today is the concept of showing up for yourself. So me being an example, I show up for Good Up. I will stay up late. I will get these episodes edited. I will, you know, make sure that I will take my laptop to work and use these people fucking good Wi-Fi and upload these shits while I am doing the people them job. Okay?
Yeah,
So-
so will absolutely do that. She has.
Right. There is no question. There is no doubt in my mind that when it comes to showing up for this podcast, I do that. Right? But when it comes to showing up for myself, bitch, I'm not always very good at showing up for myself. So I wanted to
Okay.
talk about that concept because that imposter syndrome episode was so fucking good, and it's been on my mind since then, because beating imposter syndrome, beating
I do
self
not mean
doubt.
to interrupt you. Are you hearing these bitches outside my door making all this noise? The dogs? Okay, never mind. Carry on. I'm so sorry because they are out there really tussling, and I'm like,
Yeah, no, I can't hear them.
y'all can
Listen,
do it anywhere
my
else
cats to
except my
be
door.
my cats to be doing full blown like lucha libre, like going off
They out here
wrestling, and you
really
don't never hear it.
like they're scrapping out there, and I'm like, y'all have so many rooms in this place, y'all could do this, but y'all have to do
You
it
know.
right outside my office door.
Yeah,
Carry on. I'm so sorry.
I can't hear them because your mic kind of like isolating
Oh,
your voice.
phenomenal. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
But yeah, so looking back at that imposter syndrome episode and thinking about what is it going to require for us to surpass imposter syndrome, to
Yes.
take care of ourselves better. Y'all know we always talking about finding ways to become good up, right? To take care of yourself better physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. So what does it mean to show up for yourself, right? And I read in the Google definition so that y'all bitches know me talking on my ass. So showing up for yourself in the ultimate sense means that you make choices that honor your emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual needs as they arise. It isn't as simple as self-care. So in order to show up for yourself, you have to be clear on who you are, what you truly desire for your life, so that you can make choices that will lead you there. So showing up for yourself isn't just, like I said, it's not self-care in its simplest form. It's, who do I want to be?
Yes.
And what kind of life do I want to have? And am I being honest about the work that it requires for me to have that life? And am I being honest about whether or not I doing a fucking walk? So
got it. Okay.
So in saying that, do you feel currently like you show up for yourself the way that you need to?
Honestly, I can confidently say yes. And the reason for that is because even when I don't realize that I'm doing too much and I'm burning myself out, I'm surrounded by people who are able to point that out to me, and I'm very open to receiving that information. And I came to realize that because just a couple of days ago, my niece had to sit me down and have a conversation with me about the fact that I am depleted. She's like, you are literally depleted. Like, you seem to only want to exist to being a good mom. You go to work, you come home, that's it. You're not yourself. You're not walking the dogs. Like, you're just so like a shell right now. And I could have taken that as a criticism, but instead, you know what I did? I took what she said. I started investigating. I started opening up. I started talking about what's going on that's making that possible. Because as far as I was concerned, I was just tired, But since that conversation, I've been more intentional about showing up for myself, right? Because I think that is a form of showing up for yourself, is, for one, doing it consistently. But when you fall off and the people who love you notice it and they point it out, you actually do the work to show up for yourself. So yes, I am. I even have been advocating for myself in the workplace, because y'all know I went back to working for other people. And I have been very clear with my boundaries. This is the most confident I've been in establishing and maintaining boundaries, is in the workplace. When it comes to my availability, I'm like, this is my availability, no exceptions, non-negotiable. If by chance a super emergency arises, contact me. We'll see. If I'm available, I'll come. If I'm not, too bad. Like, I've been very good about that. Even there was, I don't even know, maybe it was a misunderstanding, between maybe me and my manager about my availability. And I noticed that the schedule was not consistent with my availability. And I properly reached out to him via text so it could be in writing. Like, I've been so good about being like, no, I feel like I have learned a lot from the past when I have not been showing up for myself, that now I am very adamant about it. Maybe so much so that it can be off-putting for others, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I learn the concept of showing up for myself, I've been more conscious about it. But it took a long time for me to even acknowledge the idea of showing up for myself, right? Because for me, my bigger priority is showing up for others. So showing up for people at work, showing up for friends, showing up for the podcast, showing up for this, showing up for that. Because sometimes you want to be included in a space so bad that it comes at like a detriment to yourself. And that's definitely what I struggle with. So I think until therapy, and shout out to therapy and the hundreds of dollars that I've paid for it.
We stand therapy. We stand therapy. Thank God for therapy, honey.
Until I was in therapy consistently and
Mm,
learning how to practice the habits of showing up for myself, I don't know that I even like it was a concept
mm.
in my life because
Yeah.
people don't people understand the concept of another person showing up for you, right? We
Mm-hmm.
understand that we want our friends and our family to love us enough to show up for us, right?
Yeah.
But we don't get the concept of, but what about why don't you love yourself enough to show up for yourself,
That's
right?
very true because I'm guilty of it. I used to be very
Yeah.
much like that. I used to be wired to show up for others, and then over time I kind of had to realize like because even showing up for others doesn't guarantee that they're going to show up for you. So I've adopted the belief of pouring into myself so that I can overflow. And that's my verse. That's how I'm able to show up for others. So that when I do make myself available to others, it's not coming from a depleted place. The only person I still struggle with not doing that with is Dylan, but I'm also responsible for him. So I have to show up
Yeah.
for him. You know, like I have
And
to.
it is hard, I think, for mothers, especially because like it's hard to feel like, okay, well, maybe I don't have to show up for this person today when that person is a child who cannot show up for themselves
Yeah,
adequately.
my job is to show up for him.
Right, that's your job. So one other thing that I want to point out, and unfortunately I cannot remember her username, and I was stalking TikTok trying to find this girl. There was a girl who the reason I even brought up this idea of showing up for yourself in therapy is because I found this girl on TikTok who for 21 days or for 30 days, so it was like almost a month, she challenged herself to show up for herself every day, right? And what that looked like was as simple as like her getting up, doing her skincare every day, her making sure that she ate something in the morning every day, even if it was like fucking leftover pizza from the night before. She wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that she was doing something that she didn't normally do to take care of herself, right?
Got it. Okay.
Um, Showing up for herself was giving herself grace when she did something wrong that day or like fucked up.
Mm,
And she
that's the
would
biggest
talk about it.
one.
Yeah, and at the end of the challenge, she would just like, I didn't realize how hard it would be to prioritize myself in this like span of my life and things that I do every single day and how little I was doing it before. Like
Mm,
my well-being was never the center until I guess she did that challenge and realized like how hard it is to bring yourself sort of from being this last minute person to the
mm,
center. So that's like
yeah.
what I'm trying to, I guess, emulate because
Yeah.
if I were to prioritize or if I were to be honest and list like my priorities in order of like greatest to least, I think myself and my well-being would be like this much.
Really? That used
Yeah.
to be me. That used to be me. But now I find that it's always gonna be Dylan at the top. I don't care what y'all say about me, call me. I don't give a fuck. Dylan's name is always gonna be at the top of that because I've literally built that human being from liquid. So that's my greatest creation. That's gonna be at the top. And then right next to that is gonna be me, because in order for me to pour into him, I have to pour into myself. The girl, what did the girl say to put on your mask before you put on others on the plane? So I really had to learn that, as difficult as that was. But I do have a lot of priorities, right? I got to make sure the dogs are walked, I got to do all that stuff, but I wouldn't say that I'm at the bottom, at least not anymore. There was a time I probably would be at the bottom and not realize it, but now I'm like, no, because if I don't do this shit, none of this shit ain't happening. Like if I don't take
I
care of me, nobody's taken care of.
I think maybe I'm closer to mid tier,
Yeah.
probably if
Yeah.
anything. But the reason I say I'm at the bottom is because if it comes to choosing someone else's well being and
Mm-hmm.
choosing myself, or choosing to do something for somebody else and choosing myself, I'm going to choose
Mm-hmm.
that other thing. I'm going to
Mm.
choose, finishing that project at work, even if it
Oh
means that I don't have
wow.
to drive home in rush hour traffic. And we all know how I feel about driving. Like,
Yeah.
so again, and bringing back up therapy, the reason I had to learn how to show up for myself was because I didn't have any other choice. My mental health had
Mm.
gotten so bad
Yeah.
that, I had developed like panic disorder and was having anxiety attacks all the time. And it was because this constant, routine of doing everything for everybody at the
Mm-hmm.
expense of myself. So, one of the ways of showing up for yourself, and this, I got from conversations with my therapist and also from online, the first way to practice it is commitment, right? So committing to
Mm.
yourself. You don't have to become a self-care guru. You don't have to develop the baddest, like most detailed morning routine. You know how the girls on TikTok be like, I read my Bible and then I write 40 pages in my journal and
I
then
do
I
my morning
meditate for an
devotions.
hour
Yeah,
and
I'm
then
not,
I drink a cup of chai tea and I get dressed in my
girl.
high-rise 34th floor apartment with a view of Central Park, and then I leave to work at Google. And I'd be like, bitch, no wonder you could do all this shit in the morning. You can afford it.
That
You know
part.
how to do in the morning? Roll over bed, braid my hair, and go walk, and brush my
Hello.
teeth.
I looking
Like,
for a lot. I'm looking for it. Like, and that's the thing. I feel like a lot of, and that's why I don't look online when it comes to like self-care and things such as that, because I feel like it is so commercialized. I'm just gonna
mm-hmm,
be real. I feel like it's very
mm-hmm.
commercialized. I feel like when people hear so, oh my God, I was at work, and just a quick little tangent. Um, I realize that where I don't prioritize myself is the workspace. Now that I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
leadership position, I tend to prioritize everyone else's needs, especially those who I'm leading before my own. For instance, I will forget my breaks, but I would remember to make sure everybody else got their breaks. And little things like that. Because part of my role is to make sure that everybody has been given a 15 or a lunch break or what have you. It's so easy for me to keep a look at the schedule and make sure I give people their breaks at the right time, but I never remember mine. And that sends me into a tailspin. But in any case, I remember being at work and I have a coworker who she's such a sweetheart. She's a lot younger than me. You know, a lot of my coworkers are younger than me. And one of them even called me his work mom. And I was like, wow, but whatever. It is what it is. So I asked her how she, you know, we hadn't seen each other in a while. So I was like, how are you doing? It's nice to see you. And then I remember something that she had opened up to me about in the past. So I was following up on that. Like, hey, how's it going? How would you say your self-care is going? And when she brought up self-care, when I brought up self-care, all she could think of or bring up was like pedicure. You know, I haven't had a pedicure in a while, so I'm probably gonna go do that. She brought up all those shallow things. And I'm like, when last have you seen your doctor? When last have you yes, the pedicures are nice, but that's not self-care. Those are nice little additions to the self-care. Those are nice little luxuries, but are you focusing on your mental wellness? Okay, you know, like those things are what matter. Yes, the pedicures are fun and they're nice, and soaking in the tub is beneficial, but it's not the only thing that contributes to your self-care. You know, your self-care is hydrating. Your self-care is getting enough rest. It's
Eating.
eating. I was literally about to say it's eating on a primary basic level. It's eating. Okay. And also when you're eating, what are you eating? You know? So yeah, that whole getting up, you know, that whole creating a morning routine thing is kind of like, girl, that's just
Yeah,
not practical for some people.
it's not practical, and it's also these morning routines have so many steps. And honestly, a morning or a nighttime routine, showing up for yourself is as simple as saying, I know that my body needs hydration. So I'm going to make sure I drink water today.
Mm-hmm.
Or I know that I am having trouble falling asleep. So I am going to make sure I take time to start my nighttime kind of unwinding early. I'm going to take my
Mm.
shower, I'm going to lotion my skin, and I'm going to go to sleep. Like, real simple. You don't have to say, oh, I'm going to put on these 12 serums and make sure my skin pop in. No, it's,
No, and you don't
I'm
have to
going to
listen
make
to the
sure,
binary
right.
frequencies.
And yeah, like it's as simple as saying I'm not going to cut myself short or sell, myself short, I guess, by just going to sleep and making it that simple, not giving myself time to decompress from the day, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
committing to yourself in that process is saying I'm going to hold myself accountable for doing this as much as I can. Not every day this week, not, oh, I'm going to do it for 60 days straight. It's I'm going to try to do this
Mm-hmm.
every night as much as I remember until this becomes a habit in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, committing to myself was I know that moving my body and being outside puts me in a better mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and I have a habit of when I want to start working out and being active again, I love to make it a challenge. I love to make it a big
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then I end up not following through.
You and Diamond so good for that.
I love a
Like
good challenge.
you and Diamond
So
got
because in my head, it's like, oh, I'm going to, make this a thing so that I can hold myself accountable. It never works. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked to my coworker, who is also a very good friend of mine, and I was like, "Hey, I really want to start walking at the park down the street from work in the mornings, at least twice a week." Right?
Mm,
I was like, "I've noticed it just makes me feel better at work, whatever, whatever."
mm.
So the park is almost like it's a huge park. So go doing that loop one time is 3 miles. So that's all we need to do. One
That's
loop and go walk.
dope.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like the best possible setup. So the first day we were supposed to do it, it was 40 degrees outside. It was 6 in the morning. We were meeting for 7 because we wanted to go walk after, and we have like showers at work and everything.
Yeah.
So I woke up and instantly my brain went, fuck no.
Yeah. I was
Like,
not doing that. No,
fuck no,
no.
I'm
Get me out
cold.
of here.
But then I was like, if you don't do this, if you don't find some way to vent, to, get like relax, to, start your day, like you're gonna just keep doing the same shit every day. You're gonna be exhausted. You're gonna be dealing with the same
Mm.
problems. And when I got there, my coworker was there, and she was just like, "Yo, like I would like ready to text you and be like, fuck this." Like she was feeling the same way, but we
Yeah.
both like we decided to show up for each other. But she said the same thing. She was like, "But I told myself if I don't get up and just do it, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to do it." And I promised myself, right?
Oh
So
my
when she
gosh. I
said,
love that.
I promised myself, it made me think of like a child, right? We talk about inner child all the time. And I'm
Mm.
sorry because I rambling on this point, but we don't talk about inner child all the time. You showing up for yourself for me is me picturing 7-year-old Heiza, 8-year-old Heiza,
Yeah.
and me picturing saying to that person, I promise we're gonna go for a walk on Tuesday, right?
And
And
then
me
not doing
continuing to tell
it.
that person I was tired, I couldn't go, I didn't feel like it today,
Mm.
and imagining how
How
that inner
disappointed
child,
she would
right?
be. Because as a kid, that's like, you told me we would go. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I get that. That's
So
really nice.
yeah, I try to picture it that way because and then it's also if somebody else were promising all these things to me to show
Mm.
up for me and they continue to disappoint me, I would hold them more accountable than I am holding myself for
Mm.
not showing up,
Oh, that's
right?
a fact,
I
honey.
would be if this was my husband saying, promising me something or trying to show up for me in some way and then just not doing it, not reaching that level that I need him to reach, I would
Yeah.
express disappointment in that. So what the
That's
fuck? Like,
really
why can't I do that for myself?
exactly. That's really deep though. And I love thinking about it in that way because it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, and that's part of what made me start showing up for myself more is because just because you're showing up for others doesn't guarantee they're going to show up for you. But if anybody going to show up for you, let it be you. You know what I mean? Show up for yourself, like show
Yeah.
up for yourself, because then you know what I do feel and what I found, especially as I started prioritizing myself more, is when you're showing up for yourself, when you do show up for others, you're doing it and you don't care whether or not they're able to show up for you. Does that make sense? Whereas, like, if they're not able to show up for you because something fell through, you won't feel like this sense of disappointment. You won't feel let down as much
Yeah,
because
because you're
you're
giving that to yourself.
yes, exactly. And that's wow, that's really dope. And I don't think that's really taught to us enough.
Yeah, it's definitely not because we're taught, that a lot of what we're taught about being kind and being
Mm-hmm.
good and all that stuff is in relation to how we treat other people. It's not really in
Mm,
relation to how we treat ourselves, right?
yeah.
Um, Another part of showing up for yourself is speaking up for yourself, right? Making sure that, back to that conversation we had about setting boundaries and doing all of that stuff, speaking up for yourself in situations where, you are not being treated well, in situations where,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, you have that schedule with your boss, you've talked about it, you've, made it very clear that there are certain days that you want for your son and for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And
Yeah.
when that expectation wasn't met, like you advocated for yourself and you
I
spoke
had
up for
to.
yourself.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that is showing up for yourself. And it can be scary because none of us want to be the person who are like, hey, you did this thing, or hey, this thing is happening and it can't happen because I need to prioritize myself in this situation,
Yeah.
right? Um, Again, we aren't taught to do that, but also showing up for yourself it don't feel right. It feels selfish.
Like you're being selfish. And the thing is somewhere along the lines, the girls told us that being selfish is not okay.
Hmm.
Why is it not okay? Now, granted,
Yeah.
It's one thing when you're prioritizing yourself at the expense of others.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing when you're prioritizing yourself because you understand that when all is said and done, you're still left with yourself. I feel like
Yeah.
those are two different things.
I think because people cross being self-centered,
Mm-hmm.
being considerate of yourself, and then being inconsiderate of other people. I think when you're
Yeah.
self-centered, to me, it's like you are incapable of thinking about anybody else, and like you're very inconsiderate of other people's feelings. But I
Yeah.
think when you are prioritizing yourself, it means
Mm-hmm.
as much as I know other people matter in this situation, my health and my safety and my well-being matter more, right? They come
Exactly.
first. So I
Because
have to
I'm
make sure I'm
responsible for
good.
me. Right. Like I
Exactly.
don't expect you to sacrifice your well-being for mine. No, I got me. I
Hmm.
got me. Make sure you got you. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's always been so weird. Like as soon as we hear the S word, like, as soon as we hear selfish, everybody, goes into like a tizzy. And it's like, but
Yeah.
we should be a little more selfish. We should teach people how to be compassionate and kind, but not
Yeah.
at their own expense.
Yeah, because like you said, this idea of, pouring into yourself so that you can then pour to other people, and you looking at it as I'm going to continue to pour into myself so that when I am overflowing, I have enough. I have more than enough for other
Exactly.
people, right?
Exactly.
Um a lot of people don't think that way. It's let me pour into you first and then pour into
Mm-hmm.
myself later when there's
Yeah.
probably nothing left.
Nothing left. And then that person, a lot of the times, what happens sometimes is you find yourself feeling like, oh, I've poured into this person and then they took it and left and didn't pour
Hmm.
back into me or what have you. Maybe if you were just pouring into yourself, you would see that that person is likely to do that to you. Because when you
Hmm.
pour into yourself and you're overflowing, what happens is you you actually have people around you who you guys kind of pour into each other. It's very reciprocal, but if you're always pouring outward, then the people who just have their hand open are who's going to come toward you. You know what I mean? I don't know if
Hmm.
that makes sense or not, but
No, yeah, it definitely does.
like I think it becomes this like a moth to a flame. Like if you're constantly just that person that everybody knows is going to drop everything to assist and pour outward and never think about yourself, then that's who's going to, the people who enjoy that and don't even think about you are going to come flock into you. They're going to
Yeah.
just be coming. And then when you don't have nothing left to give, they're going to move on and go to somebody else who does have something to give. So pour into yourself. That way
Yep.
other people, benefiting from you ain't going to be a loss.
Because there definitely are people in this world who see like they flock towards those type of people. They flock towards the people who give and give and give and give because you make it very easy for someone to
For
be
them,
friends with you who is not, their intention is never to pour into you, right? So if they see, oh, this is the type of person who gonna give her all and she don't expect anything in return and she ain't gonna, prioritize herself. I'm a person, this is this fictional person. I'm the type of person who just wants to take and take and take. This seems
mm-hmm,
like an easy win for me. So a
mm-hmm.
lot of times people are wondering, well, why do people treat me this way? Why do people, take so much from me and not give anything in return? I think we can expect reciprocation and we should absolutely set boundaries and want reciprocation from the people that we
Mm-hmm.
love. But at the same time, if you are showing up for yourself, then that means that you are learning how to recognize that shit from other people quick
Ah,
and
exactly.
prioritizing yourself in those situations to say, I gonna keep my distance, or I am going to choose myself first here so that this person does not expect this type of give and give and give from me. And the other
Exactly.
part of that, the other part of showing up for yourself where that comes in, I guess, in this situation is in order to show up for yourself 100% and accurately and bravely, you have to stop giving a fuck what other people think.
But say it again.
You have to stop caring what other people think. I
Let me tell
say
you
this to
something.
myself. I look at myself in a Zoom camera and be like,
Look
bitch,
at yourself. Let
you
me tell you
have
something.
to stop.
I'm gonna shout out my fellow Brujas in the Peace, Love, and Magical Vibes group that I'm in on Facebook and all the social media places where that group exists. Fuck them people. That's something that we say among each other all the time. Fuck them
Fuck them
people.
people. Them
It
kids, your
fuck them
family.
people. Anybody who's offended by you prioritizing your wellness is fuck them people. Because
Hmm.
they should be prioritizing. If me prioritizing my wellness offends you, that means you ain't prioritizing your own wellness, and that's not my problem. Because the thing is, if I see that you're going through something that's genuinely outside of your hands that I can help with, by all means, I'm gonna help, honey. But I'm not gonna push my well-being aside. You know what I mean? I don't give a fuck what nobody think.
Listen, right now, my husband and I are talking about experimenting with something. It's not an open relationship. Please relax. But we are talking about
living apart.
Yes.
Oh, I want to see y'all do that. I think y'all are gonna love it.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I actually want to try it first, see what we feel about it and what we think about it, and then come back to the podcast and be like, yo, this shit dope, you know? And when that happens, I'm actually going to bring, like, Steven will join the podcast.
He's going to join the... Wait, I gotta clean the house. I gotta get the place ready. I gotta... does he like pound cake or what should I make?
I mean, he like cake, but I don't know if he like... Anyway, we're talking about this thing, right? And the first thing I remember me feeling when we had that conversation and walked away is, what are people going to think? All right. About this scenario, because when it comes to married couples and making decisions that are not within the line of traditional societal norm marriage, everybody's like, are you getting a divorce? That fucking ain't working. Like, and for us, this is actually like, no, we want to see how we can make this better, right? Yeah. This is us showing up for ourselves because we've both identified, right? Shut up. I just know. So we've both identified this area in our life where we would actually like to prioritize the individual instead of the marriage, right? And again, I'm gonna go into detail when we actually try it, but my first thought was like that panic of like, people are going to think that I'm being selfish, that this is me wanting me to be the center of the universe, right? And then I had to stop and be like, yo, and Steven even said it. He was like, but what's wrong with us wanting, even while we're married, what's wrong with us still wanting space for ourselves, still wanting to show up for ourselves and prioritize ourselves?
And I'm going to call you out real quick, because the key word that he's using is us. He's not saying what's wrong with you wanting to be in your... He's saying us wanting space.
Yeah,
he's not saying, hey, I want space, so I'm just acquiescing. He's saying, what's wrong with us wanting space? Yeah. So it seems like something you guys are on the same page about.
Oh, for sure. I would never publicly talk about it if this was not. Like, this was an extremely mutual, like, we were sitting there talking about it and there were no, like... Well, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, it was very much like, yo, this would be fucking cool. Like, we were excited, you know?
Let me ask you something. As long as you guys have been together, have you guys ever lived apart while in a relationship?
Yes. So the first 2 years of our relationship, we didn't live together. Okay. And then for the rest, the out of 5, because it's been 7 now, Jesus Christ. Yeah. We have lived together in some way. Actually, no, for 3, because there was at one point there was long distance at one point too. But again, I'm excited to kind of bring this back and talk about it once it happens. But this idea of showing up for myself, right? The reason I had given up on it, or I have such a hard time with it, or, you know, all of that, is because I have a very traditional job that people often kind of sacrifice themselves to show up for. I work in a nonprofit while people are working until they're exhausted for, you know, a good cause, quote unquote, right? I am married, and even when you try to be non-traditional in marriage, that part of you shows up and kind of just falls into it. So again, you stop showing up for yourself because you want to show up for your partner, right? You want to show up for your marriage. So, you know, it's been on my mind a lot because I'm like, yo, like, we don't show up for ourselves. We say that we want these things. We say that we have all these goals. That's the other thing. People are so goal oriented and not wellness
journey oriented. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I have all these goals, right? I was just fantasizing not too long ago about like Spotify emailing us and being like, hey, we want to sponsor your fuck. You know?
That would be so
like, how dope would that be, right? But if I am not physically here, if I am not mentally well, right? If I don't show up for myself, how can I show up for good up, right? And same thing with you. On the days where you are burnt out and exhausted, like, we have those days where we call each other and be like, yo, I can't
Can,
fucking do
can
this.
we not record today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because what that does is it gives us time to rest. We show up for ourselves and we come
Hmm.
back the next week and we just hit the ground running.
And
Or
we
we show up for ourselves and record maybe extra episodes a little early when we have the energy, so that
hmm
when those days happen, we can,
we're good, and it's not going
yeah,
to compromise the quality of our work. It's not going to compromise the consistency of the production or
exactly,
anything like that. So it's very
exactly.
true. It's very true. I actually really like that we're having this discussion, this
Yeah,
topic. I
yeah.
because majority of our listeners are women, right?
Yes. So
And I
80% of our
feel,
listeners are women. Shout out to the little 20% man them in the audience. We love you, bud.
hey, we love y'all too. We
You know why we love Ayo though? Because y'all are consistent, because y'all give a lot of
mm-hmm.
feedback, male
You
audience
do.
members,
You
but
do.
also because a lot of men have come to me and said that they don't feel like, quote unquote, this podcast is for them. So for us to have a set of consistent male listeners means that
Mm-hmm.
y'all are at a higher level intellectually, and you realize that the topics that we
Mm-hmm.
discuss are not, they come
For
from a
women,
female perspective because
but
it's
they are for
us,
everyone.
but they are for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to Ayo. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
The
we
reason
are
why I asked
80%
is
women.
because I know it is more likely. I'm not saying that it's not the case for men. So I'm not in the mood. I'm not arguing with y'all. I don't have time. What I'm saying is it is more likely for a woman to be more self-sacrificing in that way, correct? Like it's easier, it's more likely for a woman to show up for everybody else but herself than it is for a man. I'm not saying that it's not possible for men to not show up for themselves. Let's be clear, because I know
Yeah.
that there are plenty of
No.
men who don't show up for themselves. But if you take the average like dynamic, it's usually a woman who's like giving to everybody except for herself until she's like in the hospital. you
Yeah. I
know?
mean, so I do see what you're saying, right? And I do agree with it to an extent, because we see things like people in marriages who happen to have kids, how naturally you will see like the mom in that situation, doing more of the mental labor, like making sure doctor's appointments and all of that stuff are happening.
Mm-hmm.
They are kind of like, I don't want to say naturally inclined, but that's usually when you see that scenario, you see the mom kind of doing a lot more of the like mental and physical labor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of raising that child. Or in a married household, right? In a traditional household, you see that women are often expected to do like that extra labor of like keeping up the household and then working full time, right? Whereas their husband
Yeah.
will like work full time, come home and chill.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I do want to insert here that I have male friends who go through a lot of mental anguish about this idea of providing and showing up in that way for their families and for
Mm-hmm.
their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So much so to the point where they feel like that's the only reason that they have been placed on earth, is to do
Oh, that's
that.
sad.
And they
Mm-hmm.
don't show up for themselves. So a lot of men don't practice self care. A lot of men don't go to therapy. A lot of men try
Yeah.
to kind of brush it off and just deal with their feelings and vent, or go to the gym or
Yeah.
play video games, and they don't show up for themselves because
Yeah.
they feel not necessarily. So for women, it's more of, we don't show up for ourselves because we're too busy showing up for everybody else. For men,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I don't show up for myself because I don't feel like I deserve to be shown up for, or that's not my role in society, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
not taught that they can be emotional, or they could break down, or they could have those weak moments.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of showing up for yourself is like, well, what is there to show up for? Right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I
Or
definitely
maybe
agree.
they do, or maybe the ways that they're showing up for themselves are not helpful to them. Because I
Yes.
think that
Yes.
they do show up for themselves. It's just not in ways that are helpful to them. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that showing up for themselves, a better idea would be for them to actually tap into those emotions and have
Mm-hmm.
emotional releases, cry. But instead, they would rather go to the basketball court with their friends. Or
Mm-hmm.
so in their mind, yeah, I'm showing up for myself, but yeah, it's not benefiting you though. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
cry instead. Maybe
Or
open up to your partner, like.
yeah.
But I do agree. I'm not going to try to take away, which I would never do. I'm not going to try to take away from men who feel like people are not showing up for them, or that they're not showing up for themselves. Because like I said, I know that that's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I want us to get, just as a collective, to just get more comfortable acknowledging the ways that we could better show up for ourselves. And that goes
Absolutely.
for women and men. It does. And even the ways that we think we're showing up for ourselves and we're actually not. Like thinking that getting a pedicure is self-care when we should be actually being more transparent with our therapist, like because that's another, can we talk about that? How, yeah, you could be in therapy, but are you being transparent with your therapist? Are you being honest with your therapist?
Yeah, because going to therapy is not enough, right? Going to therapy is one form of showing up for yourself. But sitting in a therapist's office, knowing that you are withholding information, knowing that you're not telling the whole truth, knowing that you are not holding yourself accountable, and you're not being honest with yourself or with your therapist, one, you're wasting your time, so you're not showing up for yourself.
Your time and your money.
Yeah, you're wasting your time and your money, so you are automatically not showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
But you're also withholding the progress that you could be making. You're stalling it.
Yeah.
So you're not showing up for yourself. So all of these conversations we having, right, on this podcast, just we've talked about boundaries and generational trauma and relationships and all of this stuff. You can acknowledge and say, yeah, I agree and I feel that and I relate to that. But do you then do the work afterwards?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. How are you going to materialize that? Like,
right. Materializing those conversations and like doing a walk is how you show up for yourself, right? We can do all this talking, but until we actually say, I'm going to take these steps to make sure that I am taking care of myself, that I am prioritizing myself, right? That I am the center of my universe. As Christina motherfucking Yang on Grey's Anatomy once said, he's very beautiful, bitch, but he is not the sun. You are. Okay?
I love that. I love that bitch.
And I don't keep that with me. Like, life is beautiful. These goals you have are beautiful. They are very dreamy. They're very big. This job is awesome. Your husband is awesome. Everybody's great, but they are not the sun. You are the sun.
You are the sun in your universe. Yeah.
Yeah, they might be parts of your universe. They might orbit very close to you. I don't know all the astrological terms, bitch, but you are the sun.
I do.
So just remember that, prioritize that. And yeah, I mean, Deidre, I don't know if you had anything else to add other than show the fuck up for yourself.
Yeah, show up for yourself, because I'll know I got to show up for myself so I can show up for my family. We got to wrap it up. Right. I like it because Dylan will knock on this door any day.
Right. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of Good Up. You can join us on social media, tagging us at Good Up Pod on all social media platforms. We have our own special Good Up exclusive ass hashtag, bitch. It's called hashtag Good Up Tuesday. So we want you to use that hashtag to have conversations online about this podcast. If you want to financially support this podcast, get exclusive access to this video so you can see this beat on me and Deidre's face today. And
we definitely have our makeup.
Right. We look good as fuck today.
We do. We do.
Our Good Up VIP section on Patreon, also in our private Facebook group, has exclusive access 1 week early to episodes, but also to the full video on all of our episodes. They also get exclusive access to when we are releasing new seasons. They get to contribute to episode ideas. They get to do a lot of stuff. Okay, they Good Up Bad. So join us on our VIP section at patreon.com/gooduppodcast. And yeah, shout out again to the VIP section for your support. Shout out to the audience. Shout out to those 30,000 downloads. With that being said, Deidre, tell the people and bye.
Bye.